I thought it was a challenging exercise to try to put together a few things that I here and there, and some sort of short, brief presentation. So what I basically tried to do is to condense some of the ways in which the questions of regionalism are being discussed at the level of policy and at the level of academic debate, so to speak, in the region, in the effort to try to capture some of the mental map about what's actually how debating and thinking through the main processes that are currently going on in the region with this big question is what's going on. Nobody really knows what's going on, and this is part of the whole idea. So basically, first of all, I'd like to start off with this view that we are at a different time, at a different moment that many have tried to capture and categorize as a post-neoliberal moment of regionalism. Some have called it post-neoliberal, post-liberal, post-hegemonic, the different attempts to categorize this moment. And basically, the defining core element where there's consensus around is that on the one hand, what used to be the so-called neoliberal hegemonic consensus around defining the whole policy debate on integration, which was prevalent in the 1990s onward, and is now finished. So what we have now, and one symbolic turning point is the end of the FTA, the Free Trade Area of the Americas project, which ended in 2005. But that's all historical categorizations. It's somewhat kind of a symbolic turning point, but it was a politically very important symbolic turning point. What comes after that is a proliferation and fragmentation of the regional agenda, integration agenda, into various competing, quote-unquote competing, overlapping, that's itself part of the debate, projects which have the common theme or the common characteristic is that everyone embraces regionalism in all political spectrum ends, but the way in which regionalism is approached, understood, policy-wise, is widely divergent. So here, there is, again, this reflects a moment in which there is no just automatic implementation concerns. Here what's at stake is the defining of a new agenda, defining of a new vision, and the contestation between the different perspectives. And that's so that's what makes it difficult to define of what's actually going on. So around this moment, the post-hegemonic, post-neoliberal moment, I think there's a few themes that structure the ways in which academics and policy makers and civil society actors are looking and thinking about in the attempt of assess and characterize these phenomenon or this phenomenon. And this is what I want to do now. One of the themes is whether there's change or there is continuity. I mean, whatever comes out of this, whether it's new or not. And that's, it's again, it's so for example, on the one hand, you would have projects like the Pacific Alliance and all the bilateral free trade agreements that have been signed and implemented by many countries on the Pacific Rim, coexisting with Mercosur is more or less of a reformist type of integration project, and with ALBA, which is the Bolivarian alternative for the Americas. And so, on the one hand, to what extent, what's new and what's different from here? I mean, one view here would say that, for example, all the free trade-oriented, market-oriented, externally oriented models of integration is just a reloaded version of the free trade area of the Americas, just but with a smaller number of states participating in them. So on the one hand, there's nothing new there. On the other hand, there's genuine attempts in Mercosur to try to bring up to some kind of consistency between, on the one hand, an outward-oriented project with the domestic market, with an industrialization agenda, and linking up both processes, which is proving challenging and difficult to do, challenging and difficult thing to do. On the other hand, we have ALBA that is more concerned with a social approach to integration. It's a social regionalism, which is centered mostly on on policies of cooperation, reciprocal market cooperation, and social policies. So what's new and what's not new is not clear, because even the so-called the ALBA and Mercosur, I mean, still have to deal with some fundamental questions like the whole pressure towards extractivism, the reliance on natural resource exports, which is a historical trend of all Latin American economies, and of regionalism as we know it until so far. So I mean, it's not clear. So that's one debate on the one hand. On the other hand, there's the debate of unity, whether there's unity in plurality. In other words, are these three schemes or approaches to integration that in Latin America now, and I'm missing out here the CELAC, which is a whole other one, right? And which does encompass all of them, and that which is the community of Latin American and Caribbean states. And but in this second theme, the unity in plurality, there is a question as to whether these different models or approaches to integration, whether they are, first of all, whether they are all indicative or expressions of something broader. Do they all manifest something bigger, you know, in which they're all contained? Is it part of a similar phenomenon which has to do with, for example, the location of the region in the context of a global political economy, which demands natural resources, China invests new patterns of investment and all that, which would then, you know, emphasize the similarities between them. And so, for example, the race of natural resource dependence as a prevailing theme in all of them. On the other hand, there's the plurality of them, which is more optimistic as the extent to which the different models are in fact competing models. And so they're not defined by a common theme, but they are actually, the states and politics have a more of a margin, of a space to administer and set the priorities of those the regional agenda. And but then that raises the other problem, this unity and plurality theme, which is if all of them coexist, I mean, they're not discretely independent one from the other. I mean, many of the states are take part in more than one regional integration scheme at the same time. So there's a lot of overlapping. So this raises the question of how they all interact. Okay? So, for example, you have countries like, I don't know, and the more paradigmatic one would be Venezuela, that is now a member of Mercosur, is a member of ALBA, is a member of CELAC, right? Or you have, for example, all of the Andean, the Pacific Alliance ones, which at the same are members of UNASUR at the same time as they are members of the Pacific Alliance, have FTAs with China and with the United States and with many other countries. I mean, so in what ways do they interact? Is this so is the general theme something that is an aggregation of processes, or do they all cross-fertilize each other? And this is, in terms of political debate, is important, because this opens a new arena of thinking about, for example, how different countries mobilize certain agendas or debates or discussions into the whole regional integration debate. So, for example, I mean, things like the whole articulation, legal articulation of rights of nature in constitutions. That's something that is being pushed by Ecuador and Venezuela in the context of regional politics, or human rights by Argentina, or, for example, dispute settlement mechanisms and a new investment regime by South American one by Ecuador. I mean, who's actually leading this? And in what way the different fragments or elements of these regional mechanisms are serving as platforms to give a regional debate? So that's another. The other big theme, I would say, is the again, who provides the leadership? Who are the drivers of the different schemes? So, for example, when it comes to the whole South American, say, regional integration process, like UNASUR, which is highly political, and UNASUR is a union of South American nations. I mean, there's this big debate as to whether big states with big economic influence and political influence and territorial weight, like Brazil, whether they are the ones driving the process, or whether UNASUR is itself the product